Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this podcast interview chat with James Malins. Really honored and happy to be talking to you finally, James. How are you getting on?
Good. And like I say, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you, inviting me to come on, and I look forward to chatting. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I've been aware of your work for a little while now and just how active you are on social media, on Facebook, and writing very inspiring, spiritually uplifting posts. It seems that you're very dedicated and very committed to helping people on the spiritual journey. I mean, how have you got to this point? Like, what was the, obviously not necessarily going into the full life story, but what was the general process that you've gone through, like the spiritual awakening? Because it's so interesting, especially during these times where so many people are waking up. And you're a relatively young guy, 27, and to be so spiritually focused and active and committed, it is commendable. So I mean, how did you really get on this path, and what is the motivation for you to do the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so it's and to kind of, as you mentioned, really condense it down. It all started when I was a teenager. And, I was bullied. I wasn't seen for who I was. I didn't feel like I was appreciated. People used to look at my exterior instead of really seeing me for who I was. And that sparked up a lot of pain and a lot of frustration within myself. And so I've often mentioned this part of the story where I was, literally stood outside this room looking in the mirror. And as I think many people have, I was saying, why me? I was, if at the time I was saying, why God, why is it me, that I'm the one that's suffering? And then I ended up turning around and saying, well, hang on a minute, why not me? What makes me different? What's different about my experience to anyone else? And so in that moment, I took responsibility. And the minute that I took responsibility of my life, then everything started to change and shift. And I started to realize it was happening for me. And then once I got to a point of inner stability, well, then I said to myself, well, if I can do it, then everybody can do it. I was the skinny, scrawny kid that everybody looked over. I wasn't particularly externally attractive to many people. So if I could go from that kind of stereotypical societal image to being somebody of what I felt was, had their stuff together, then everybody could. And then that sparked my path and journey and the dedication to really try and help people to realize that their truth comes from within and that they are worthy and always will be. So
awesome. It's something that I think about a lot, and I speak to my partner about quite a bit, is how suffering and pain seems to be the most effective motivation for people. Like a lot of people who've created or achieved something great in life, they've suffered. Just at the top of my head, Tony Robbins, he was like beaten as a child by his mother and things, and he is very, very driven, obviously, and helps a lot of people in his line of work. So it's interesting that the force of pain and suffering versus the force of love and spirit, which it seems that a lot of people need to suffer to find their calling and to, I guess, develop empathy and to ultimately find their dharma, their path to help others. But what is it about suffering that seems to be such a powerful motivator, initiator, and a force to ultimately help people, on their path?
I think the reason why I was smiling is because I think you've asked one of the most profound questions that anybody could. And that is the difference between learning through pain and learning through love. And of course, through our lives, at least up until this present moment, the vast majority of people, I would say, have learned through pain. Whether it's come from parental or societal or school or friends or relationships, whatever it is, it's usually been met with pain. And I would say that's because 99%, maybe more, of the entire population has been, and I will use this word, but only gently, has been indoctrinated to learn through pain. And at the beginning of this year, I started to understand what it means to learn in love. And ironically, that's when I ended up meeting my partner, and our entire interaction from start to finish, of course, a couple of moments of pain, but most of it has been through love. And so, yes, pain can be a fantastic motivator. That's true. And I cannot ever deny that, because that's what my whole life has consisted of. But, you know, now the more I start to explore it, love can be one of the most profound and powerful teachers as well. And if we do it right, we can learn faster through love than what we can through pain. At least that's my belief and what my experience is showing me currently.
I think Buddha was correct when he said, you know, life is suffering, and obviously there's a way out of suffering. And it does seem that, you know, planet Earth, you know, 3D reality, duality, arguably Luciferian ran culture and planet, pain is and suffering is a big part of our reality and our journey. And also we are balancing karma, right? So we all have karma, we all have ancestral karma. We're working through these stories. We're inheriting karma from parents and from grandparents and great grandparents, plus our own karmas and things. So it seems that it's a school where karma is the method, if you like, of us learning. I mean, karma ultimately leads to a process of learning through our life circumstances, learning through our challenges. But ultimately, we're here, I believe, to resolve karma, where karma, you know, loses. It's not a reality based on karma. It's a reality based on love and presence and unity consciousness and the law of one, and you know, these principles. And I think there's so much kind of craziness that's gone on over the last couple of years, and arguably it's always been crazy, millennia of wars and empires and things. I think if you're not optimistic about the future of human potentiality and human evolution, life can be very tough, can be very bleak. If you look at it on very much on the external, what's going on the planet right now. I think you and I, we shared the same belief that the planet and the human species is evolving, spiritually evolving, ultimately to possibly a much better place and state. Is that how you see? Do you see that we are evolving as a species?
Definitely. And it's ironic, because if we are to kind of take this imagery, to me, the evolution of the people is going from this expanded idea into a much more minute and micro idea. And that's about coming back to each individual person. Because as you did mention the potential Luciferian agenda that's on the planet, I agree. And I agree that that agenda has very intelligently, and I use that word gritting my teeth, has very intelligently separated people from certain truth. For example, you know, the truth that nature is designed, my truth personally, it may resonate with others. The potential truth that nature is designed for us and to be a space of pure love and nurturing. The potential truth that we are limitless and boundless in our human condition, not just physically, but also through our consciousness, etc. So as people start to break away the chains and the shackles that have been, you know, latched onto them, like having to have a career or having to have these beliefs about your image or you are or what you're capable of, when you shatter those ideas and you realize that you are infinite and boundless, well, then you reach a point where, well, I mean, the human race as a people, like where do you go? You know, like it's infinite. You know, to me, you truly do reach a point where we all become complete co-creators, and we start to create not just a paradise on Earth, but potentially beyond. You know, so yeah, that's where I see, is that we reach a point of pure co-creation in love as well.
Awesome. Again, on if we take things at face value, it seems we've got a long way to go, but at the same time, more people seem to be waking up than ever before, especially during the whole COVID situation. A lot of people have have woken up to something not feeling quite right. Something isn't quite right. What we're being told doesn't quite make sense. I mean, how do you feel about these last couple of years and what's been going on the planet, and what you're seeing and what you're feeling and what you're intuiting about this particular time that we're going through, or we've just been through?
It's another really excellent question, and literally only half an hour ago we mentioned the word between me and my partner, and it's denial, right? And the ability for people to live in denial of their own greatness, which is what I will say, is getting smaller and smaller. So the things that are happening in the world, it gets to a point where the logic is so intense that you cannot deny the absurdity of what's happening. And so, I mean, even if we're okay, that's the catalyst, right? Is that's becoming quite absurd and almost bizarre. But when we start to then look at ourselves and we say, well, I've followed that for the vast majority of my life, and that's now ridiculous. What about me is, in quotes, ridiculous? For example, oh, I can't do this because, or I'm not able to do this because, or I'm not this because. And then all of these reasons as to why you're not something also start to dissolve. And I think this is why a lot of people are waking up. We were just discussing about food and products, and the fact that, well, I mean, I'd love your opinion on this, but to us, like, the vast majority of it is poisoned. So as we're doing this juice cleanse, as we're trying to then return our bodies to a, in quotes, pristine state of being, which is just allowing the body to do its thing. Thank you to my body for its perfect design, which is everybody, by the way. Every single person has a body with a perfect design inside of it. As we try to return to that, again, we're getting one step closer to becoming what we always have been, and what, as you mentioned, they have tried to prevent us from being. So, yeah, I think that wake-up call for a lot of people is, again, like, they're looking and thinking it just doesn't make sense anymore. And so they're questioning not just that, but everything that suppressed them from being who they really are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. What I get from you, the sense is that you've got a lot of conviction. You're very fully committed to the journey and the path that you're on, and you speak with conviction. You write with conviction, and I'm interested because I was reading your bio beforehand, and it's just about sort of the process you went through the bullying, and then really embracing, like, the weightlifting and embracing the masculine energy, which is conviction and is strength and is direction and is decisiveness, and its boundaries and all these qualities, but yet not at the cost of the feminine, because that that without the feminine is brutal, is war, is aggression, is just competition. So to integrate the feminine is so important. And I see there's a teacher, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, called David Dider. He's like a tantric teacher. Are you familiar with him?
Say that again. Who was it? Sorry?
David Dider, Deida.
No, I've not heard of him. No.
He's awesome. I'll send you over a link to some of his work. But he talks about these stages of evolution for both men and women. And, like, the first stage is the stereotypical masculine or male, the stereotypical feminine. So the stereotypical masculine would be like, the brute, the caveman, the brute. And then the second stage is where it embraces the feminine, but very much focused on the feminine. So it might be artist, poet, very sensitive, emotional, very in touch with the feminine, but without integrating the integrated masculine. And then the third stage, returning back to the masculine, but with the integrated feminine. And that's, according to him, is that process that we go through. And I think, say, like the 1950s, 60s, the stereotypical men were brought up to be that stereotypical male, and that's the first stage. Whereas I think maybe our generation, we have a more of a developed second stage, more of a developed feminine energy, growing up, raised by women, raised by mothers, raised by female teachers at school. Things are more accepted in terms of, like, getting in touch with, like, doing music or dance and things like that. But but it's this journey that I've been on and continue to work on, is that reintegration of the masculine, but without negating the feminine. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that journey that you went on, and what was it, a conscious journey, or is it just something like, I've been bullied, I need to toughen up, I'm gonna hit the gym, I'm gonna, you know, build up, and it just kind of happened without thinking about it? Or at what point did that become a kind of conscious process that you went through?
So it's another amazing question, and I think that for me it was in the beginning, yeah, I was unrefined. You know, when it, especially through, you know, maybe from 13 up to 18, pushing 19, I was really unrefined. And it was only when certain people who I was connected with, when I started to become what everybody else was. I mean, I've always, ever since I was a child, I've always had a soft heart. And it was only, you know, because I needed to, as you said, that I moved into this kind of like aggression and anger, that, you know, which was necessary, because what that did was people tried to tell me who I was and they could never get through. It was like a steel wall. Like there was nothing they could say that would at that point stop me from pursuing what was important to me. I mean, I had people that say, oh, I'm concerned about you. When I used to do videos in the past, like, we're worried about you and we don't want to see these videos anymore. And I'm like, like what?
Was that family or close
It
friends?
was old school friends, and I hadn't seen them for a while, and I went to, and they're like, oh, we're concerned about you. I'm like, and I kind of
James has
like,
gone crazy. He's got all like woo woo spiritual, like
literally.
See you guys.
Yeah. And that was it. And but it was interesting because as they were saying it, they had a few drinks at the point, they started crying. And so these two men, and I will call them men, who I used to be friends with, who I hadn't seen in a very, very long time. I met them, and they all were worried, and they started crying in front of me. And so it was kind of this this looking at me. Well, I don't know, maybe I was about to discover something I'd never thought about. It was kind of looking at me and not wanting to see what I'm doing, but yet then getting emotional. It's so bizarre. It was kind of like its own paradox in itself. But I think what happened is when and I guess there's no way I can say that might not sound arrogant, it's not supposed to, but when inside myself I felt that much power, you know, like from the gym, and I felt unstoppable, then it all settled down. It was like the tsunamis had then settled down, and then I realized, well, now there's a level of responsibility that comes with this, because I want to be of service to other people. You know, I want to come from love. Like, I don't want to come from this fire and aggression, because it's not necessary anymore. Right. So when I reached a point where nobody was attacking me, nobody was bullying me, well, then it was just peace and calm in my life. And so then the fire took a step back, and it was warming the inner world, as should we say, like my inner home. And then love came forward. And this is when the feminine rose. And then I started to realize that, you know, out of all of the suffering that people have been through, none of it was necessary, truly. I mean, okay, I can't say that because it has molded people into the people they are, you know, and they've taken from me what they have. But if we were to skip all of that and go back to the beginning, it wasn't necessary, because love could have been there. So I think that helped the integration with me between the masculine and feminine. It's like, you know, even to this day, I still know who I am. You know, somebody could try to come along and say all these things about me. Well, that's where the fire would come forward, not literally, but it would stand and say, I know who I am. And that's all that's necessary. But then the love, in fact, I'd like to, if it's okay, I'd like to give a 45-second visualization to kind of depict this. So I was meditating one day, and I was kind of, you know, like, I think maybe we all have, thinking about the, in quotes, dark forces or the Luciferian agenda on this planet, and thinking, you know, like, if we want to come from love, well, what do we do if they roll tanks through the doors? You know, it's all well and good then, you know, but then I had this visualization, and it came to me. It was gifted to me. It wasn't literally from me. I was connecting with some guides, and they showed me this visualization of a man with brown robes pouring tea for somebody less, you know, who might have been struggling a little bit. And he was pouring tea, and these 3 Roman soldiers came out of the inky blackness into the picture in my mind. And he put the teapot down, and from underneath his robe, he pulled this sword. And with this inhuman speed, he dispatched from each one of these Roman soldiers, then come back and just started pouring tea again. And it was kind of, the message was, is that when the earth is moving into a place of love, and okay, it's not literally just talking about violence, but if people are going to come to try to destroy that, then as you mentioned with karma, they've sealed their own fate. And it's not to say that we're going to be doing the dispatching, but the message is that they will seal their own fate. And the path of earth, at least to me, is going to be one where it is again about the nurturing and the tending to those people who need it the most. And we will have the space to do that no matter what. So I just thought that was an interesting visualization that had come forward.
Awesome. So in terms of like developing the masculine energy, you'd recommend to other guys the path of weightlifting and gym work? Do you think that is one of the most effective ways of really building that inner strength and that external strength?
Yeah, I would. And I would say it this way. For me, the gym and sprinting before that, the gym mainly, it was my workshop to prove to myself that I could change who I was. Right. And this, because I think that a lot of men in this world, they're getting more and more emasculated, or however you pronounce it, by the fact that, certain things are coming forwards, perhaps women are desiring this or that, and they feel like they can't keep up with this desired need to be something. So the gym for me was a way to prove that, I have a certain level of control over my world, and again, hang on a minute, because I want to word this appropriately. To connect with the masculine in all people, not just men, ironically, it takes the understanding that you have power. Not power to manipulate or control, but power to change, power to do good, power to be who it is that you are, and nobody can take that away from you. And then when you understand this power within, whether it be getting in the gym and realizing that you can go from weight to weight to weight to weight and get stronger and stronger and really connect to that inner warrior and that inner fire, then they start to balance. Because when you realize you're unstoppable and you have the ability to do whatever it is that you need to do, then you can then lean back into your own feminine and realize, well, this power is there now. And now I can move into the world with that peace and serenity, whilst knowing that I'm an unstoppable force at the same time. So it's kind of like they once you almost reach both extremes, they start to then settle down and balance into this purity of thought and this purity of heart as well, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, that's, I think, really valuable and something I can relate to, hitting the gym more and more these days and embracing that. As a friend, he said the gym is a communal man cave, which I thought was quite apt. It's where guys go, and ladies as well, but go to just work out, just like you said, kind of prove to themselves, or just work out energy, or just connect to that fire and that strength. And yeah, I think that's really valuable. And how, I guess, once the threat has gone, and the threat not only externally on a physical level, but also your own maybe inner demons, the threat, the memories of the bullies from school and things. Once you slayed those, slew those demons or those thoughts, due to your own self-belief and self-worth and inner strength, then it's like, okay, there's no threat now. So what am I going to do? I want to help people. It's almost like you've overcome your own karma, your own challenges through that process. And now you're more in a pure channel-like state to do the work that you're doing. You're not constantly being triggered or, fighting against invisible enemies or anything like that.
Literally. And I think it brings a deep level of awareness of the purpose for everything in life. And it's kind of like it takes all, because often, because you mentioned an interesting word there about being triggered, and for a lot of people, triggers usually stem from past experiences that bring up either memories, feelings, or emotions that may potentially, and I say potentially, be undealt with. So for me, and with a lot of the work I've done with many people over the years, often those triggers are simply messengers. It is a message to tell you that something from your past of great value is still seeking to present itself to you. And so when that value has been acquired, and when you understand, like for me, bullying, why was I bullied? because it forced me to become who I needed to be. And then it made me realize that, well, those bullies are only bullying because they've been, abused and attacked, and they don't know who they are. And then it opened me up to empathy and awareness and perspective and perception. So all of my pain from the past was merely a messenger that was trying to show me something, but I wasn't listening. And so in my inability to listen, the rage, the anger, the depression, the hatred, the et cetera, that was the byproduct. But even they were messengers, because I wouldn't have had those emotions had I have just been truly listening. And this is nobody's fault. It wasn't my fault or your fault or anybody's fault, because we weren't shown to do this, and so to me, I still do believe that karma is a messenger. And the minute you get the message, it dissolves and it dissipates almost instantaneously. Because, if I am not going out into the world seeking to cause pain directly and deliberately, and if I'm trying my best to be of service and to be aware and to be conscious and to be aware of my impact on other people, if I'm hurting them, either indirectly or even slightly directly, if it's from my own emotions and, as you mentioned, triggers, then once all of that starts to settle and we realize what we're doing, we take responsibility. What need is there for karma? And we kind of almost like then karma becomes our driving force for good and to be of service and of love. At least that's my kind of take. I'd love your opinion too, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's spot on. I really resonate with your personal philosophy, and and I think you listen to the message. Okay, you're being triggered, or you're going through an uncomfortable scenario situation, to truly heed the message and then change behavior, because most likely there's some sort of behavior involved, and adapt to the signals that you're getting. I think is very important. I think it's difficult when some people are trapped in circumstances. I think Joe Dispenza says to change, you have to rise above your environment. But some people, let's say a dysfunctional household, like parents or partner, where it's a daily basis. There's conflict, there's emotional triggering, there's manipulation, and all these things. To rise up above that, either asks for a radical change in behavior, or maybe it's just subtle change in behavior, or a complete separation from that environment. So yeah, I think you're completely right, but it can ultimately mean some big action, or some significant action has to take place, and it can be subtle, or it can be more profound. But so we're not constantly going through that same, because I think that's what it is. It's like, the karma is like guiding us to that perfect, or that as close to perfect existence. We're all here to be happy, right? We all have the right to be happy and to enjoy life. And especially as you get a bit older, then you have like responsibilities of a house or family and money and all these things, and all that stuff can be very, very heavy. But I still think that you can do all of those things and still be in your true, authentic frequency. But it just gets more challenging. And then it's like just living that joy, that life of truth, of joy, of passion, of excitement, without the boundaries and the limitations that society and culture put on us. And it's I think it's challenging, but more and more people, even with lockdown and people being able to work from home, and so going to the office, I think that things like that have been big, because it's more people working online than necessarily having to go places, and it's freeing up time for people to do other things. Just things like that, I think they can make a big difference. But what I'm also very interested in, James, is this concept of this bifurcation of consciousness, this splitting of consciousness on the planet. Like when we talk about the global awakening, is in the way you perceive it, is it going to be we all collectively awaken? Or do you see there being some sort of split in the collective, where you essentially have almost like two different timelines running simultaneously? There's some sort of interaction, but albeit maybe not full kind of joining of the two timelines. And ultimately those two timelines just going off in their own expression. Some people are going to be awake and some people are staying asleep? Or do you see it as we're all ultimately gonna awaken together as a species?
You ask the best questions. You really do. I love the questions
the
you
deep
ask.
questions. Yeah,
They're great. They're great. So before I answer this, I'm gonna, for anybody listening, I'm gonna honor your, ironically, which will be a part of my answer. I'm gonna honor the free will of everybody and say that this is an opinion that is based upon my observations, potentially my own truth, but I don't want to, install that into anybody else. So my answer to that is, in regards to everything on this planet, there is an underlying rule of free will. And so, whether that is deities or gods of people's beliefs that are, interfere or do not, I believe that with each human being, they are gifted inherently with free will. And so therefore, if somebody chooses to, as we mentioned, stay asleep, which is merely the inability to accept almost the logical truth, or being even open to exploring the truth of multiple facets and ideas, if that's how we define being asleep, then I believe, there will be some people that will stay asleep. Because, as we mentioned, the system that was designed for people to completely rely upon it in every facet: food, water, shelter, fuel, heat, abundance. Everything was designed, education, learning, relationships, it was all designed to rely upon certain systems and means of control. So some people may find it impossible within themselves to leave that system, whereas other people, and this also connects with the masculine within all people, other people will question, and that questioning will lead them to their own truth. And when they find their own truth, well, they'll have no need for any systems, and for any means of control. And I feel like, and I'd like to actually share this, in regards to, ironically, what, myself, Lucas, and a good friend of mine, Callum, are doing. We're kind of creating Gaian Earth at the minute, which is a platform and a place and an idea which is going to help people to have a place to separate from, these systems. So that if they decide, because you mentioned as well, house, car, bills, career, all of these things which can potentially, again, not definitely, but potentially hold people in a perpetual cycle of need and of, having to do this or else, right? That's actually the sentence when we think about awakening. If people have to do something or else, well, it becomes a system of control. Whereas if we can provide people who say, well, you can build this and it might, instead of it being an absolute, it's a potential, it'll help to set people free. And the whole point of, Gaian Earth, as we've called it, is to give people food, water, shelter, fuel infinitely, but forever. They never ever have to think about that again, because it's in their back garden, or it's in this plot of land that they can, quickly travel to and get what they need. So to fully answer it, will everybody be awakening? I can't answer that directly, because that's people's choice. I think a lot of people will awaken, and they will then take a path where their life is their own and they decide what it is. But maybe not everybody. I think that might be their choice, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth there. And absolutely, sort of free will, and some people, everyone's here to experience and explore different things. And for some, it's, for some it's the awakening, and maybe for some it's not. And that's completely, ultimately, it's like we're here for an experience, right? So that's just as valid as the other paths. But you mentioned about, in terms of what's your vision, or how do you see things evolving for those who are looking to be more sovereign, or to the challenge is to live a authentic spiritual existence within doing our best to do within a system and culture that's already quite established. I know you're very much a proponent of permaculture, and you mentioned this Gaia. Is it Gaiam Earth?
Gaian Earth, yeah.
Gaia,
so with
Gaia.
an N on the end. Yeah.
Gaian Earth. Cool. So, in terms of your vision for 50 years, 20 years, 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, however long it takes for the human communities and species to evolve to this more sovereign, more free expression. Like, I mean, what do you see? And obviously the work that you're doing is your gift back to humanity, and that's obviously part of your vision. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you envisage people living moving forwards?
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the question, and I want to start by, because you mentioned about it being perhaps my gift. And first of all, I also want to include Lucas and Callum in that, but I want to expand that further to say that it isn't my gift to give. It's the gift that's already been given to everybody. We're just trying to shine a light on what's already there. And I say that with a humble heart and a deep level of love, because what we're trying to create is something that is exclusive to nobody and gives everybody the opportunity to have what's always been there for them. And that is the perfect system of nature. So for anybody who's watching, the definition of permaculture is to help to create a system in nature, trees, vegetation, vegetables, flowers, shrubs, wildflowers, etc., that work together in their already perfect unison to create a system that not only keeps itself replicating constantly, but also provides immense abundance whilst serving itself as a system. So it's like, it's already there. All we have to do is go into a area or a plot of land and plant into those areas with love and intention and spiritual connection the certain plants and flowers that will create this perfect system. And so 10, 15, 50, 20 years down the line, I see that many people, especially those who choose it, will have a space on this planet, whether it's, we like to define it, and so do the Anastasia books, as a hectare of land, which I think is about 2.5. I say because there's a differentiation between 2.5 and 2.8 acres of land. So each family will have a hectare of land, and that land will be theirs, and it will be theirs to, without taxation. They'll be able to, provide their own food and trade or sell to other people. It'll be their land that will be handed down through generations, and it will be a space of love. And this is how I like to really define this. So each human, family or on their own, will have a space of love that is theirs. And we're not just talking about, I mean, it's incredible in itself, but we're not just talking about, trees and shrubs and vegetables in a plot of land. We're talking about a space of love that is connected through even the infinite creator, the universe, whatever, is connected to them on every plane of existence. So when they have a child, the child may be conceived there and then born there. And so even the thoughts and the actions of the parents in the feelings of connecting and conceiving that child is then a beautiful space of love. And the child is brought up with living nature and living things that nourishes not just its body, but its consciousness, its heart, and its soul. And so to me, like, it's about returning back to what has always been there in a nutshell.
Back to nature, back to natural living. Yeah, that's awesome. And community, obviously within those individual living spaces. How do you see, maybe I guess it could evolve and be different for other different places, but like some sort of a communal living and some sort of central point or center within that with those individual families? I mean, is that something you think about, like about how the structure and organization of some living spaces can develop?
Definitely. And you see, because, if you think of each family having 2.8 acres of land, if you had a 60-acre plot, and you could have, upwards of maybe 120 families on that plot of land, don't quote my maths there, then you could have, those 60 families would interact with each other. They trade different foods with each other. They'd be able to then, it becomes less about survival and more about exploring the purity and truth of the human condition, the consciousness and everything that we are. So we're not trying to survive to get the money and to work until we're 60 to then relax. Everybody has everything they need. And then from that point onwards, I mean, well, I think that's what I'm starting to explore now, is what that looks like. I mean, that to me is heaven in quotes,
Mm.
heaven on earth, the Garden of Eden, Avalon, Hyperborea, whichever
Mm.
word we've used for it, that's what it becomes. And then we really do connect on an incredible level. I mean, incredible.
Yeah.
So
Shamanic, tribal fires,
yeah,
drums.
literally. Mm-hmm.
And what about technology? Is it a rejection of technology, or is it an embracing with technology?
Good question. Again, that's not for me to say. I believe that it's possible for it to be an integration with technology, but another great question. I think it can integrate, but again, if we look at technology now, it's beginning to rule. Again, like with all things that take immense precedence, when it begins to rule and it becomes an absolute, that's when I think it's going too far. So if we bring it back to it can integrate with the perfect natural design that we already have, I think it's possible. But again, an excellent question. I think time will tell. Time will really tell.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult to know what's going to happen in a year, let alone, a few decades. But it's exciting, and I think it's important that that we can stay optimistic and excited about the potentialities and the work that you're doing, the work that people who are watching this are doing. We're all doing our individual part. We're all playing our part in this, and it seems that really we've kind of let go of the old school religions and Christianity and things like that, and it's I think we're developing a new tradition, and it's a more of a holistic and more of a all-encompassing and less dogmatic one, zero dogma, but just a way of natural living and connecting to spirituality in different ways, and reconnecting back to the shamanic, the natural commune with nature and all these things. And yeah, it's awesome that the work that you're doing, and yeah, it's just great to hear that these things are really being put forwards, and these communities are building and growing, and these connections are being made. And we're talking, I'm in North Yorkshire, you're in, right, close to Nottingham, and I just see, with more and more festivals and communities and centers growing, and it's very exciting for me. And I think that's really what we're here to do. Certainly, is just to connect the dots, connect the communities, connect the tribes, connect the centers, connect like-minded people, and yeah, it is exciting, albeit there's a long way to go, but yeah, it is exciting. And James, what about we'll sort of start to conclude. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do, and how you're helping people, like a little bit about the process that you take people through, and some of the biggest challenges that you notice. I think one thing that stood out, what you mentioned, is about, again, it's back to that conviction, is that people realize their own potential and realize that they don't need to do what they've been told they have to do, but they can truly connect to their own power and take responsibility, and they don't have to follow the norm and follow convention and things like that. And I think that's really key, and that's a very big part of personal development, is where we break free from expectation and convention. And that can be difficult because obviously it's passed down from families. That's going on a slight tangent. In terms of the work that you're doing, what kind of work are you doing? How would you describe the work you're doing, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you find that people are working through, and that you're helping people work through?
And you explained it pretty perfectly. I would say that and I appreciate the invite to share as well. With the work that I do with a lot of people, it is simply somebody will come into my space, whether it's doing a call like this or coming in literally. And the first thing that I provide is a space of safety to fully express themselves. Because I think that for a lot of people on this planet, one of the most difficult things is that they can express maybe 10, 20%, and it'll either get shut down or it'll get ignored. It won't get truly heard or seen. And so my biggest endeavor with working with someone is 100% expression. So someone will come in and they can express it all with safety, with a space of love. They won't feel judged. They won't feel like they're, crazy or insane or there's something wrong with them. It's nothing like that. They come in, completely express it, and then from once all of that expression, whichever they're comfortable to express, you know, again, like whatever they're comfortable to share, once that's been shared and expressed, then we start to look at, okay, now let's look at what the actual truth is, not for me, but for that person. So when we then discover the truth in each experience or each moment or each, you know, lesson or moment that comes forward, then we start to really, as we say, find that peace and balance in each moment. And so as we go through that experience, once it reaches this real point of they're comfortable and confident that they know, well, then we start to go along the lines of discovering their purpose, their passion for being here, and many, many other incredible things. So yeah, that's kind of where I start and where it leads with the work.
Awesome. That's awesome. And what's the best way for people to contact you or to find out more about you?
Yeah, so I've on Facebook. I mean, even if you're watching this now, I think I'll be tagged in it, so you can come across to my profile. I share a lot of my stuff in my profile. You know, I've got YouTube and Instagram, and most of it's James Malins, and I've got a website, etc. But yeah, if you drop me a message on Facebook, I'm more than happy to chat with anybody who'd like to explore it, and more than grateful for connecting with anyone too. So
awesome. And just to say, James's Facebook posts are really powerful and very thought-provoking and very inspiring. So if you're not following James on Facebook, then do follow, because I know you post most days, and yeah, some awesome content. Yeah, so yeah, do follow James, and just you'll be inspired by the message that you're sharing on a daily basis, which is phenomenal. And I know there's something that we talked about a bit before we finish, like social media. Love it or hate it, obviously it has a lot of benefits, and it can really help and you to spread a message. Can you just share your thoughts on how you've developed your relationship with social media? And like you said, technology can take over if we allow it to. What's your attitude to social media, and how you relate to social media, and navigating the potential pitfalls or addictions or things like that?
Yeah, and that's the word right there, addictions. And that's a perfectly described word. I think that, like with everything, social media can be and what I strive to do myself, can be a platform to share loving things and potentially purer things, and things that really come from a place of compassion and care. But of course, it can also be a place of judgment and insecurity and pain and addiction. You know, I've not been I've not escaped this myself. You know, I've often found sometimes that I'll go on to check one thing of a post, and before I know it, I've been scrolling for 15, 20 minutes, you know, and then I clock myself and I think, what am I doing? You know, and so it is designed, I think, to be addictive in nature. So for all people, if you can really work on that discipline and work on that ability to just disconnect from it, you know, maybe share something of love, or follow people. I don't like that word, but walk with people who share loving things and things that come from the heart, then that can be beneficial. But like it's like everything, it can be damaging or beneficial. And, you know, so I try to the best of my ability, look at things that are positive and loving and nurturing. So
awesome. Yeah, well, again, I just want to acknowledge you, James, and the work that you're doing. And, you know, really, it's really powerful, the message that you're sharing. And for a young guy, the conviction that you live with, the strength that you express, and your energy, and how also you've integrated your heart with the work that you're doing with that strength is quite incredible. So I just want to thank you for everything you're doing. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate connecting with you today. And yeah, it'd be great to, you know, chat another time and talk about some other kind of crazy and awesome topics.
Well, and I appreciate you having me on the show very, very much. So thank you for letting me come on.
Brilliant. Cheers, James. We'll connect sometime later. Maybe we'll do another show. And just wishing you all the best for 2022. And to everyone watching, do be very honored if you subscribe or like the video. as it just helps the channels. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you more in the new year. Blessings, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.